Hey everyone, welcome back to month number 3. We're talking creating your first plan, and we are going to be specifically on your first plan that you've created. We're going to go deeper and we're going to be setting up and configuring the settings, right? So we're going to be doing your project plan settings, and I'm going to be explaining the different views. Okay, so we're going to go into that plan that we created over the last couple of sessions here, and we're going to just give you an orientation of the configurations that you can do, and then go and talk about the UI and what all the different buttons do on the UI, because it's a pretty powerful thing. It's there's a lot going on. There's a lot going on inside of our plans, and it's kind of important for you to understand and kind of appreciate what's all the different things that you can do and kind of learn some of the nuances, because there's a couple of hidden features here that you should be aware of, that definitely will either increase or degrade or decrease your experience with the plan. So we're going to cover a couple of very key items that I think you should be aware of, and just also giving orientation of how to navigate around the plan. Because up to this point, we've been creating the plans, we've been putting the data into the plans, but now we're ready to really do magical with those plans. So, as I mentioned, plan settings and plan views. This is part of our Jira Advanced Roadmaps, aka plans for project managers. So, welcome. Now, before we get too far, if I can get a quick mic check, you all know how I like to do my mic checks here in the morning. Make sure that you can hear me. So, if I can get a +1 on the chat here, that would be great, just to kind of give me that sense, that piece. So, if you can do a 1 on the chat, that is going to let me know that you guys can hear me. Okay, Chad, thank you so much. That's good enough for me. All right. So this session is being recorded and it will be available on YouTube. And if you haven't subscribed, want to remind you, make sure you subscribe to the channel. We're so close to hitting 24,000 subscribers, folks. So if you're watching this and you haven't hit that subscribe button down below, just take a second here and smash the subscribe button. Help us get to 24,000 subscribers as soon as humanly possible. It'd be cool if we can get to 24,000 before the Atlassian conference in just a couple of weeks. We aren't going to be doing any slides here. These are just for me to kind of keep me on track here. We're going to talk about two things: plan settings, plan views. That's pretty much it. You'll see in a second. I don't do much in the slides, so don't worry about the slides. We'll be in Jira. Again, subscribe, because you're going to want to come back and watch this in case I say something a little too quickly or too fast. You're going to want to come back and watch that recording. So make sure you're subscribing to that channel. Also, I do a lot of training, so make sure you smash that bell notification as well, because I do 4 courses over the duration of the entire month, 4 different courses, which we'll talk about at the very end. But in case you didn't know, I do 4 different ones. And so you're going to want to hit that bell notification so you're notified when I go live with my other courses. Now, in the chat here, if you can just take advantage and just say hello. I love to see where you all are from. So if you can tell me where you're coming in from. And more importantly, let me know, are you going to Team 25 in just like 2 weeks? Team 25 is Atlassian's premier conference. It's happening in Anaheim. It's just a couple of weeks away. And I'm going to be doing a talk, a session on this very material here. So I would love to find out, are you coming to Team 25? If so, are you going to go to my session? That's the most important one. So let me know. A couple of people are saying no. So Anka, no. Joseph, Las Vegas, and yes to Team 25. So Joseph, make sure you sign up. Make sure you come find me and say hello. I'd love to meet you in person. And also, we'll be doing this in person, right? So the session will be in person. So that would be the first time. So Joseph, make sure you find me. Um, should be fun. No plans to visit. Okay, so a couple people are not coming. It's breaking my heart that you guys aren't going to be able to come, but it's definitely worth an experience if you guys ever get an opportunity to come out to the Atlassian conference. They do it every year around springtime. Definitely add it to your bucket list. All right. Other than that, feel free to ask questions at any point. We're going to be zooming right through this. I actually have to take my car to service, so right after this. So we're going to want to end right at the moment there. And so if I can finish a little bit earlier, I'm going to try to end earlier. Luis, make sure you sign up for the session. It's Thursday, so for anybody who's interested, and we'll be at Teams. It's going to be Thursday at 3:15 p.m. So right at the end of the expo, there's like a 4-hour gap between the end of the conference and the bash party. It's like a 4 or 5-hour gap. Let me take up like 2 hours of that time, because trust me when I tell you, it's a very boring 5-hour gap. So my session is right at the end of Teams. It's going to be awesome. We're going to have a great session. And I'm going to have my book. I'm going to do a giveaway of my book and amongst a few other things. So make sure you come by. And for this course, make sure you stick around to the end because we have an offer for you all here at the end. Now, a little bit about me, just so you're aware of who I am, what I'm all about. My name's Alex. The internet likes to call me Dr. Jira. And I'm an engineer. So I have a bachelor's in computer engineering, a master's in systems engineering. I have the ACP 520 and the ACP 120. And right after Teams, my buddy Roddy and I will be launching a full, like 14 session study into the ACP 620. So we're going to be doing that shortly after Teams. And then I just dropped the link tree here so you can basically, if you need any help with any of your Jira problems, if you want to take a look at the merch, take a look at the book. Oh, I got a lot of stuff for you. So definitely check out that link tree, especially if you need one-on-one help. That's the best place for you to get some time on my schedule. All right. So with all the marketing stuff out of the way, what are we learning today? As I mentioned a couple of times, just two things today. Although in those two things, there's going to be a lot. There's a lot to cover in these, but just two things here. We got our plan settings and we have our plan view. And so without any further ado, let's just jump into Jira and let's take a look at our plan settings. So just to kind of pick off where we left off last month. Brad, you will attend team in EU. So no announcements yet on Team EU. There was one in October of last year. I don't know. I haven't heard any chatter. Atlassian kind of threw the whole team Barcelona last year together at the last minute here. At least that's how it felt because it felt very rushed. And so they haven't said anything if they're doing it again this year. But if they do, I most likely will plan to be there. So we'll see. We'll see if I have to get out there, Brad. But we'll see. We'll see. Okay. So here we are inside of a plan. And so I highly recommend you go watch some of the other videos in case you haven't caught up, right? But what I'm assuming the prerequisite for this particular session here is you have to have created a plan already and just specify your issue sources. Okay. So you have to just be this far. And so what I'm going to do, we're going to focus on plan settings. We're just going to go through everything in here because there's a lot to cover and there's a lot of information that you should be aware of so that you just know why the plan behaves and is viewed in a certain way. Okay. And so the first thing that you're going to do when you click on that plan settings, right, is you're going to be dropped into scheduling, right? That's just the default. This is where Atlassian takes you when you go to that plan settings. And there's a couple of things that you want to do here. The first one is you want to take a look at your estimation. Your estimation here is going to be, you're going to have three options. You're going to have days, hours, or story points. And so this is a personal decision that you should make. I do believe that days is the default setting, which I don't like. I'm a huge fan of hours. I like to think in hours. I think a lot of companies think in hours. But your two options that I would recommend is either do hours, because I like them, or if you're actually truly doing story points, if you truly brought in your board and it's a scrum board and your team's executing and you do all the capacity management, which we'll talk about next month, then you're going to probably want to do story points. I try to avoid days, but hours is the one that I like as well. So, but where and how does this work, right? So if and when you select your estimation and let's just say we go with hours, back in your plan, there's going to be a field and it's called progress. And as you can see here, there's going to be a progress for hours. And when you drop that in, you're going to be able to see how many hours are on your particular issue. Or actually, now we have renamed these things. We're renaming everything to work items. So let's see if we can get into work items. Okay. So spoiler, disclaimer, flashing lights. If you hear me say issues or if you hear me say work items, as of now, as of March 2025, they mean the exact same thing. Spoilers if you haven't heard the news, Atlassian is sunsetting issues, and we are now just going to have work items. So randomly throughout Jira, it's starting to change. And so just keep that in mind that I'm going to be bouncing back and forth between issues and work items as I catch myself to talk about the new lingo that we have. Okay. Estimation from a custom field, is that possible? No. Well, maybe. Not technically. Hanar, you're gonna want to use the default stuff built into Jira. I would use that one. Okay. So, how do we put hours in here? So, when you open a work item up, right, whether that be a story, whether that be an epic, on the right hand side, you have a bunch of fields, right? And the field that you're going to want to bring, and I'm going to come over here and do original. Actually, I am in a team managed project, which I don't like. I hate being in team managed projects. Okay. But you have something called an original estimate. This is a field that exists in both team managed and company managed projects. But when you open up a particular issue and work item, and now I open up the wrong one. So now I got to go to the Epic, right? You're going to have your original estimate here. And in here, you can put like 50H. And when you do that, you're estimating that this particular item is going to take 50 hours. And so when you're back in your timeline over here and I do a quick refresh, this epic is now going to have that 50 hours, assuming I did this correctly. Let's see if I did that correctly. Yep, there we go. See, so now you can see that time remaining. So you have to put in an original estimate of however many hours you want. And then as you and your team progress, right, as you track time, which I'm not seeing the tracking time feature here, right, but as you add hours, your remaining deducts itself from that original estimate. And this is how we're able to see this part here, right? We're gonna be able to see how much we finish based on those hours that have been allocated. So that's essentially how that works, right? So you either use hours or, right, as the plan setting implies, you can use story points. So it really depends on what your team is using because in Jira, your Scrum boards can be configured for one and only one. So you can choose whether it's time, right, hours, or if it's story points, and you can't have both. I mean, technically you can. You can put both the original estimate and story points as fields, but your board only works off of one or the other. And so you're going to want to do something very similar in your plan, right? So you want to basically follow suit with however you have your Scrum board configured. Okay. So in this case, we're just going to stick to hours because I've already put hours, but again, keep that in mind. Next up, we get to configure our dates. Now, this is pretty important because this will work for any date field. So Hernan here was asking, is estimation from a custom field? Is that possible? I don't think it is, but for dates, it is. This one, you can pick any date. So I have move date, I have a new date, I have a publication date, right? You can pick your dates. And what does this actually do? Well, when you're in your plan, and you're looking at, let's go look at the list here. Well, actually, let's look at the timeline, right? When you pull in your start date and your end date, due date, okay? When you pull those in, those two dates are going to help you basically determine this right here. So as you can see, once you put your start date and your due date, that rectangle that just showed up, that is driven by those two dates. Now, out of the box, right? It's the start date and the due date. Okay. That's out of the box. However, you can change that, right? You can change it to be whatever you want it to be. So if you don't want your end date to be that due date, you can change it to be any other field that you want that you're interested in. Okay. And you just go and change it. Now the problem with all this is that this only works for a start and end date, right? Like you can only have one of each. You can't have like 3 or 4 dates. So that unfortunately, like if you had like a target date, right? A target end and you wanted to see the actual one, you can't do both. So you have to pick a valid start and a valid end. But if you wanted to see two different end dates, that's not a thing you can do in the plans. You could, however, make you have two options there. You can either A, make a separate plan that uses the targets instead, right? So it's the estimate. What did our team guess, right? Or you can lock the rectangle, right? Because remember, these dates here define that rectangle that gets created right here, the actual date here, right? And so what you can do, right, is set your start date, your due date, and then you can bring in a field like your target end, and you can just add it as a field. So you'll still be able to see it, right? So you'd see your due date as March 25th. My target was March 24th. And so this is possible, but this rectangle, right, the actual dates will only manipulate the ones that you define in your plan. So hopefully that makes sense. Okay. Smart. Let's see. We have a couple questions. So I guess plans is just for the premium. Yeah. So in case you missed it, so this this whole session, I apologize. Since this is our third session, I didn't think I had to keep reminding folks, but everything we're talking about today is a premium or enterprise only feature. You do not have this capability unless you double your bill and you actually pay for plans, right? And so, yeah, big, huge disclaimer. I probably should add that as a disclaimer for every session going forward. But yeah, if you're going to be using this capability, you have to be on the premium or enterprise versions of Jira Cloud for this to work. What's the preres video to this one? Previous. So you want to go to my YouTube channel. Well, actually, I think I have it over here. You go to my link tree. You go to my YouTube channel here. Go. Atlassian YouTube channel. Under live, if you go to live, you're going to see a bunch of different classes. So all these orange ones are the ones for the same course. So you're going to want this one right here, creating your first plan and understanding the plans here. So you want to watch both of these to get familiar and catch up to the course we're doing right now. So hopefully that helps you out there, Scott. Where linked issues will be displayed. We'll talk about linked issues in a second. Thanks. I was wondering about budget versus actual cost. My estimates are based on budgets. Yeah. So if you put that right, those don't work for estimation. Like you can still pull those fields in R&R. You can still see, like you'd be able to bring those custom fields. So one of the things that we haven't talked about yet is in your plan. We'll talk about this in a second, right? When we get down to custom fields, but you can add a custom field, and in a few moments, I'll show you how to do that. So we'll get to that. Remind me in like 10-15 minutes. All right. So that's the date. So these two right here, you can change them to any custom field you want, and just know that what you said here is going to dictate that rectangle that you can move across. Now, the inferred dates, I don't touch these too much. I don't mess with these too much. But again, this is really going to be dependent if you're truly using Scrum or not. And that is going to be Jira kind of predicts, if you will, dates, right? It's going to absorb, I guess infer is technically the right word, right? But I'm trying to find a different word for inferred, because inferred, I think, is a hard word in English. But Jira will kind of know pre-existing the dates that you should have based on either nothing, so don't put any dates on it prematurely, inherit whatever's in the sprint, or inherit whatever's in your release. So these are your two options here. And this is just so that when you pull in a story, it's already going to have a start and an end date. And it's going to be based on what sprint it's in or what release it's in. And so you get to pick that, or don't pick any of them and just say, I'll put my dates, right? And so those are your three options there. I'll leave sprint dates. I like to do that one. And then configure how to schedule dependent issues on the plan. So you can do sequential. So dependent issues must be scheduled one after the other, and then concurrent. Dependent issues can be scheduled at the same time. So this is a setting that I don't mess with, again, a whole lot either. But we'll take a look at what that looks like at the end here. But essentially, Jira is going to complain to you one way or the other, depending on which setting you have here. So Jira or the plans is really good at giving you warnings, right? And so these warnings are going to be governed by our settings here. So that's it for that very first one for scheduling, right? And even though it's a second one, we kind of started here because this is where Atlassian drops you in. And so let's just move up to plan info so you can see what can we do over here. So over here, you can change the name of your plan and you can change the lead. Now, I don't think that there's major problems. So when you rename things in Jira, like your filters or your fields or anything like that, your project, your key, those tend to have some pretty dramatic impacts. I don't think there's anything here. So I would say rename, but rename with caution, right? Renaming anything in Jira is always something you should always exercise caution with, but you have the ability to rename or to assign a new lead. That takes care of our plan info. Our save views, we're going to talk about this towards the end, but this is where we govern our views. So when we make changes, again, the second half of this training, when we go make changes, we can save them. Not these settings, but on the view itself, right? On the UI itself inside the plan. And we can save them, and then we can set which ones we can throw them away, or we can set them as default. And this is kind of cool, kind of powerful if you want to build like the perfect view and then share with your like directors or your CTO or somebody. You can say, okay, so we'll always go into this view so that all those settings are set up correctly. Now, our program board, this is a new one. So this is what's going to allow you to see different program boards that you have. Now, I don't have any. We'll talk about those later. But this is where you can basically see the settings and what's going on with your program board. So we'll come back to that. Okay, let's talk about issue sources. This is pretty important. So when you create a plan for the very first time, if you remember from last month, right? Jira is going to ask you, okay, you just made a plan. Cool. Thumbs up. Cool story. Um, it's going to ask you for pulling in issues, right? It's going to say, okay, what issues do you want to see? Awesome. Right. And then you hit create and then you're done. Right. That plan has been created and it kind of just exists. But what happens if you want to change, right? What happens if you want to add more projects? Or what happens if you want to delete data? Well, this is where you would come to your issue sources. So here you have the ability to click on add another. And now you can specify, do you want to bring in another board? Do you want to bring in a specific project? Or do you want to bring in a specific filter? All right. And the only caveat, the only thing you need to be aware of is that the limit is 5,000. So you want to keep an eye on that issues and plan because 5,000 is the limit. If you try to pull in more than 5,000 issues, Jira's going to complain and you're going to have all kinds of warnings and not a good time. And so you want to make sure that you keep this number under 5,000. So as long as you do that, you can bring in as much data as you want. Okay. And so just know that that's there. Now, I will also tell you a couple of other caveats. The permissions of Jira always trump the experience, right? That means that permissions govern what you can or can't do here. And so if you don't have access to a filter, you're not going to see that filter. If you don't have access to a project, you're not going to see that project. If you don't have access to a board, again, don't want to sound like a broken record, but you're not going to be able to see that board. And so whatever permissions are on the actual filter, board, or project, those will apply here as well. So you have to follow those rules. So if you don't have access, you can't use it in your plan. And the same works in reverse, right? So if you pull it in, maybe you have access and you pull them into your project and you have these issues, but then you share your plan with your team. If they don't have access, they're not going to be able to see the issues or the work items in there. So you want to make sure that your permission scheme appropriately complements what you got going on here from an issues perspective. Craig says, will you be covering how to integrate different projects that use different setups, Kanban versus Scrum? One uses dates, one uses points. Yeah, so I don't know that I mean, I can demonstrate it to you, but this is why these settings are important, right? Because if you choose to mix and match, right? If you choose to bring in one versus the other, you just got to expect that your experience is going to be degraded because Jira's going to, it doesn't compute correctly, right? You have two opposing natures trying to work together, and Jira's not going to handle it well. Your plans won't handle it well, right? So you have to make a call. If you are going to be using Scrum and that's using points, then the whole experience has to be points. And the Kanban ones, because they don't have points, you're going to have a less than ideal experience there. And if you go in the reverse, right? If you're like, all right, we're going to optimize right under our scheduling, we're going to optimize for hours or days because we're in Kanban. Well, then your Scrum one's gonna again have a less than ideal experience. So unfortunately, if you can, Jira does allow you to mix and match, right? You can pull in whatever you want, right? Like if I go in here and I bring in a project, I can bring in Scrum. I can also then bring in Kanban. I think I should have a Kanban one here somewhere. I don't. All right, but I can bring in whatever I want, and Jira's not gonna complain, right? You can bring in any method you want because at the end of the day, estimation is also just one piece of the whole puzzle. And so I would recommend at the end of the day, you're really looking at hierarchy. You're looking at hierarchy. You're looking at the fields of who's the assignee, releases, stuff like that. And those are a little bit more universal. So I would say don't sweat it too much because maybe you are estimating in different methods, but at the end of the day, you really want to see dependencies and hierarchy. Like that's really dates, hierarchy, dependencies. Like that's where the plan shines, and that's less relevant on your whether you're using Scrum or Kanban. Scrum or Kanban are great for execution, right? You are in it, you're on the ground level, you got boots on the floor type of thing, right? You are executing, you are delivering on your commitments. The plan is strategic. You're up here, you're much higher. You don't worry so much about execution, right? So you can see it, you can get an appreciation for it, but it's not the main purpose of this. Okay. So that's essentially how we add stuff and how we can alter, right? And if we don't want something for whatever reason, we can just click that little X and it'll go away. Okay. So that's how this is all working here. Again, the limit, just as a reminder, 5,000 is your limit. Okay. So as we move on, we have exclusion rules. Now, this one is very, very important, folks. If you're multitasking, I want you to stop for 1 second. I need your attention for the next 5 minutes here. When you are using your plans, you need to be aware of this. Okay. Not a lot of people know this. So this is very, very important. By default, your plan has a 30 days here. And what this does is when an issue is marked as done, it will stop showing up in your plan. And so this number goes up or down depending on what number you put here. And so what this basically means is that when you go look at your plan and 2 months ago you moved an epic to done, and then you're like, huh, where is that epic? Why isn't it here? I see the initiative, I see all the stories, but I don't see the epic. What happened to my epic? Well, Jira's smart enough to say, okay, just hide anything that is over this date when you moved it to done. And so basically when you resolve those issues, right? And so you want to be very careful that if you're using your plans for quarterly planning, right? If you're using your plans for quarterly execution at a time, then you might want to bump this number up to be at least 100, right? Give you a little buffer, right? But when you do that, notice that this number it blinked. I just happen to not have any extra issues, right? But if I do like maybe 500, let's see what happens here. Nope, apparently I'm bringing everything in already. Well, let's do like 10. Let's see what happens. I should be able to make this number. There we go. See how this number changes based on this day. So I would recommend that if you are doing quarterly planning, you set this up for 100 days. But I would also recommend that if issues start disappearing on you, right? If they're like poof, gone, and you're like, ooh, what happened here? Come and check this day because I'm willing to bet that somebody moved that story, that task, that bug, epic into done 31 days ago, and now it's just dropped off your plan. Now nothing is deleted. Nothing is deleted at all, but they just get dropped off your plan. Okay. And so and interestingly enough, they don't go to removed. They will not show up in your removed. I don't think they do. Right. So you just need to be aware that this is a setting that you might want to come in and change because things will start disappearing on you after 30 days. So everything might seem okay for the first 29 days, but day 31, you're gonna be yanking the hair out of your head because you're gonna try to find things that just aren't there that you know should be there, but no, there is no good reason why they're not there other than the fact that they exceeded their 30 days. Okay, so that's one setting. The next setting that we have is our issue type. So let's just say that we don't want to see any bugs. We can just do that and we will kick out any bugs. So as you can see here, this number went down. Let's just say I don't want to see epics. I can do that. And you can see this issue goes down as well. Okay. And so this is a personal preference. Do with that what you will. I like to keep as much as I can, but if you just strictly don't want to see any tasks, kick them out. And this number will appropriately reflect that. Okay. And then you have your statuses. So what statuses do you not want to see? Maybe you don't want to see anything in done. So you can just kick those out, right? Maybe you just want to see all your work in flight. And so I can just simply say kick everything else out that is done. Leave anything that's not done. And so these are settings again that you get to set, that you get to configure for your plan. This is not global. This is not a global setting. This is a plan to plan specific setting that governs what issues do or don't show up in your plan by default. Okay. Again, they're not going to be in the removed because you're technically not removing them, you're excluding them. So they didn't even make it into the plan. So this is like a precondition, if you will. And then the final thing that we can do is we can set releases here. So you can basically say anything in this release or this release, whatever, right? Whatever you want here, take them out. I don't want to see them either. Okay. And those are the 4 different things that you can do to exclude. Now, takeaway here, right? This is a precondition. These will not even be included in your plan. So they're not removed, right? Because to be removed, they needed to be in your plan, and then you need to remove them out of your plan. But this one doesn't even make them into the plan. So there's a very, very specific use case here. And I want you to be, again, mindful of that wording where these are exclusion preconditions. Okay. Because the flip side now is our removed issue. So once we're in a plan, so if you go back to your plan over here, there's a little checkbox. You'll see all these little checkboxes here, and you can just click on this little checkbox, and there's a bulk action that you can do, and there is a remove from the plan. So for whatever reason, if you didn't want to see something in your plan, you can just select as many checkboxes as you want and go boop, I don't want these. And you can hit that button. And when you hit that button, it's going to kick them out of the plan. And so again, they were not excluded because they were in the plan originally, but now we've had a change of heart and we just don't want to see them. And so when you do that, right, this is something that you and your team can do. And this is unfortunately something that anybody who has access to your plan can do. So you run into the risk that somebody might, either accidentally or maliciously remove things. But fortunately for you, Atlassian's got your back. Atlassian's got a section here called Remove Issues where you can see what's been removed. And so you can always just click on this button and re-include them, and it's just going to pop them right back in. So exercise with caution, but just know that in case your team decides to, I don't know, accidentally, again, either accidentally or maliciously remove things from your plan, you have this capability here. Now, a couple of disclaimers, right? A maximum of 30,000 issues can be removed. So just keep that in mind. Although 30,000 is a huge number. Okay, find your issues. So over here, you can just type in a key, right? So type in whatever you want here, 33, and it's going to find it. If it doesn't find it, it doesn't find it, right? Or you take a key SSP-2. I just don't remember my keys here. So I can go, all right, where in the world is it? Right? You can hit search and you'll find it here. Now, this is important, right? This is important because when you click on this view, this issue in your plan, it will help you find that issue because sometimes it can get hard, right? So if you're scrolling here, look at all of these tasks and stories. And so there's sometimes a lot. And so you can always, of course, look at them here, right? You can do SSP-2. And as you can see here, we'll find it, right? And so this search works here, but you can also, just in case, right? Just in case you don't know where it's at, you don't know if it's got excluded or removed, find your issue will give you a better understanding. All right, now that brings us to custom fields. This one's kind of an important thing as well. And so what's cool about the plans is that you can add fields. Now, not every field will work, but you can add a lot of custom fields. And this makes your plan very powerful because now we had over here, we had a conversation about, well, we have estimates of budgets, right? Well, those are going to be custom fields that we're going to want to pull into Jira. And so you simply click on this either up here or this blue button. I think this blue button goes away after the first one, right? Yeah. So you can add your custom fields. Now, again, the only caveat here is that only certain custom fields are supported. Now, the ones that are not supported are going to be anything with your assets. So anything from JSM assets, that's not supported. So anything, again, mainly JSM specific stuff, right? Those will not work. So like the approvals, stuff like that, those are not supported because those are JSM specific. A group picker will not work. So if you have a multi-user picker will not work. Although a weird, yeah, so multi-user pickers do not work. Okay, so keep that in mind. Single user picker very much does work, but multi-user picker will not work. Paragraph will not work. So if you have a big giant text box like your description, right, you're not gonna be pulling your description in here. Okay. Date time picker will not work. Date picker will, right? Just a regular picker works, but not the date time picker. And so Jesper, nope. Asset fields are not supported, as you can see here. Atlassian. Well, actually, sorry. Some of them do work. They were not grayed out. So these do work. My bad. Some of them don't. The ones that are grayed out do not work. So sorry, Jesper. Yeah, if you see it grayed out, it does not work. So we're looking at specific Atlassian things. Assets are working, right? So they're read only, but you can definitely pull those in. Sorry about that. Date time picker will not work. Your comments will not work, which I really do hope one day Atlassian changes their mind here because comments would be great to have. Paragraphs don't work. That's pretty much it. Everything else looks like it does work, right? So your short text, your number fields, your single select drop downs, radio buttons, check boxes, all of those are going to work for you really, really well. Again, just the date works really, really well as well. And so any custom field that you have, again, as long as it's not grayed out, will work for you. So I would say when you're trying to add something, make sure you slide this one over here because if you can't find your custom field and you're like, what the heck's going on? Like, why can't I not find my custom field? Well, click on that and see if you find it, and then it'll tell you if it's supported or not. But you should go in with the expectation that not every custom field is supported. Okay. Now, this is a two-step process because when you try to add a field, right? So in your plan, if you were to add, let's just say, I don't know, let's just say you wanted to add Signy. Well, let's just say you wanted to add one of those custom fields that I had, right? You're gonna click on this manage custom fields, and it's gonna bring you to this screen. Then your admin is gonna have to then do what we were doing, which is like adding it, right? So let's just say we want to do like account or an amount, right? Well, somebody's got to go in and add it, but just because you add it, right? Just because you add it doesn't now put it into your plan, right? So what that means is now that it's in there, now I can type in account and you'll see that the word custom is here and now I can pull it in. But if you're typing in a field, right, like field and it doesn't show up, it's because maybe it's a custom field. So then you got to click on manage custom fields and then you got to go look for it and then you got to add it. So I got my budget here, right? So then I can add it. And then once it's added here, once it's available, then I can go back to my plan and then I can go to my fields and now I can find my budget and bring it in. So that's how that works. That's how that works for custom fields. Okay. So that's the custom field ones. Okay. Next up, we are going to come down to access control. So we're almost done. We're almost at the bottom here, and then we're going to jump into views for the second half. So this right here is the permission. So who can see your plan? If you remember at the very beginning when you created your plan, you choose open or close. Well, you can get a little bit more granular. You can actually specify who can edit, right? And then you can specify who can view. Now, there are more plan permissions. This is a Jira admin setting. So as a Jira admin, you can actually click on settings over here, go to products, and on the left-hand side, there's permissions here for plans, and you can add more settings. So these are group-based. So you can find a group that's in your admin.atlassian.com, and you can manipulate this a little bit more. There's a little bit more advanced. I try not to get into this too much because you want people to be able to use the plans, but sometimes you got to put people in the naughty list, right? And so you do have the ability to basically enable what's called a plan viewer so that things don't start disappearing on you, right? So this plan viewer here, you can specify a group, either pre-existing or a new group, and you can then say, okay, these are going to be the people that will be able to only view the plan so that they can't mess things up. So you want to keep that in mind. Okay, so going back in again, remember that that's just a Jira admin thing that you can do. But once they're there, then you can use them in here. Okay, last couple of things here to talk about is we have scenarios and auto scheduler. You can turn these things on or off. I will talk about scenarios because I love scenarios. Scenarios are a great feature to have. Auto scheduler, I don't like it too much. We'll talk about it briefly. There's a document here that kind of works, but the auto scheduler assumes that you are a true Scrum team and that you're using estimation correctly and that you have capacity set up correctly. I've never seen a team do this successfully, but we'll explore this in next month's episode or session. But just know that there's some caveats to how to auto schedule stuff. So we'll come back. This is more of an advanced topic, but this is where you would either turn that feature on or off. Okay. Now, scenarios. If you have scenarios turned on, which I would highly recommend you turn on scenarios. Scenarios are great because they allow you to create these like what if scenarios, right? So they're really designed for, okay, I have a plan, right? I have all the tasks, all the dates that I think I want. But what if, what if I were to change? What if I were to make more tasks? Or what if I were to change the dates? Or what if we were to change the dependencies, right? And so if you have these like what if moments, well, you can create scenarios so that you can create different colors, right? So you can pick a different color for your plan. And you can tweak the scenarios without manipulating the Jira data. And so it's kind of cool, right? Because it gives you like 2 or 3 different views of all your plans without, again, impacting one. So you can do like a compare and contrast and go, okay, so there's best case scenario, right? Everybody works 20 hours a week. Sorry, everybody works 100 hours a week, right? All hands on deck. And here's like a worst case scenario. Everybody works 10 hours a week. here's what happens, right? And so you can compare and contrast how those things are impacted based on that, based on your different scenarios. So I'm a huge fan, but this is where you come and set them up. And then finally, we have our auto scheduling features, which again, you can turn a couple of things on or off. So since we're a little bit over, right? As you can see here, I did enable scenarios here, but this is where you can now, things are red, right? And the UI looks a little bit different because you can basically call out different views, right? Different data sets here for how you're going to view your stuff. All right, so I've been talking for a minute here, for 20, 40 minutes here. I'll pause here for some questions because we're now going to transition from plan settings to just the different views that we have available for us. And we're going to probably spend just the next 10 minutes on that. And then we'll call it a done because, like I said at the beginning, I do got to run a few minutes earlier to the airport to sorry, not the airport, to the dealer. My car has a recall that I have to go take care of, which I'm not looking forward to it. I don't like it when people touch my car. It works so well right now. And I actually might just want to put this one for the record. My car has zero problems. It works flawlessly. A little bit of battery degradation where I don't have 100% capacity in my battery anymore, but no problems whatsoever. So I'm doing this recording here. Should I timestamp that March 25th, 7:41 a.m. before I take my car in for service, in case I've seen so many horror stories on the internet about people that go get their fuel pumps recalled. Honda, I have a Honda, and all the fuel pumps are gotten recalled. And so I'm scared. I'm nervous that my car's just not going to work optimal after this recall. I've seen people or read stories about like the gas tank not working anymore, which is a pretty critical part of the car. And so I have a hybrid, plug-in hybrid. So again, leaving it in here for the record, in case I need to go show it to a Honda technician, that my car works flawlessly right now. No issues whatsoever. It just works like a charm. I've had zero problems with my car. So if my car starts crapping out on me after, it would have been because of something the technician did. Okay. So now that I got that on the record out of the live stream, let's answer some questions here. Let's say I'm planning for 2026. Could I possibly create 3 scenarios for 2026 and present it for managers? A scenario they accept. Yes. So this would be possible, but also I would create a different plan. I would create just a 2026 plan that is maybe different than your current plan, right? But yeah, you can definitely do that where you can create. And so the beautiful part about scenarios as well, right? Because well, I'll talk about this in a second here, but the beautiful part about plans and then scenarios by nature is that you can do a lot of changes, right? So you can go crazy and start assigning things to people, right? You can assign all of this stuff to various people. You can set dates for everything, right? You can do all of this over here like this. You can manage dependencies. You can connect things like this. You can expand, right, and make a bunch of stories and underneath everything. You can add dates for everything. You can connect all those things together, right? You can do all of this, okay? All of it. You can just go crazy and manipulate the heck out of your plan, but nothing goes to Jira, right? So when I check these dates on my SSP2, they don't come over. There is no start date. There is no due date. The assignee is not assigned to that individual. Okay. So you can go full crazy and just fill out everything in your plan, create a bunch of stores, create a bunch of epics, create everything you want to create, but nothing, I repeat, nothing goes to Jira until you hit this big blue button on the top right corner. And then you will be able to review what is here. Now, a couple of disclaimers here. As I mentioned earlier, if you don't have that permission in that project, so maybe you can see the project, but if you don't have the create, if you don't have the ability to schedule, if you don't have the ability to, I don't know, edit, right? Then you may or may not have a less than ideal experience when you click this blue button. But when you do click that blue button, it will take all those changes that we just did, and you can kind of see them here. It'll tell you everything you did, and then it'll push them into Jira. So now when I open this issue up and I do a quick refresh, right? Or maybe not, right? The refresh happens automatically. You can then see I assign it to Alana and I can see the dates, right? And so this is the only way that this works. And this is what I love about plans is that you can do a lot of theoretical stuff, hypothetical stuff, and not really impact Jira, right? Until you're ready, until you're ready to cross your T's, dot your I's, and you're ready to push that information out there. So with that said, let's just work our way from the right to the left, and let's talk about all these different buttons here. So this unsaved changes, right? So as I mentioned, right, any changes, whether you're changing a date, you're changing the assignee, you're changing the field, any field that you pull in, right? Whatever you're pulling in here, let's just say for budget, right? Account, whatever you're pulling in, right? You can put numbers in here. Anything that you do, you can see immediately this number goes blue, dark, and it says, okay, we got a change. You can always see what changed. You can see the changes that you did, the changes that were done today. So maybe other people are making changes on your plan, or maybe you can speak. Maybe you can pick specific changes that you did, and you can see those there. I normally keep it here under change by me, and then when you're done, you just hit those changes, and then Jira will go out. Now, one other thing that I clicked on here that you might want to be aware of, right? If you do this, this will send a notification. So if you're doing 1,000 of these, you might not want to spam your team. So you can deselect this one here so that 10,000 people don't get notified of all your changes. Okay. So that's that. Next up, we're going to go down to view settings. Spend some time here. This is really cool. So we can change the color of the rectangle. So when you look at your bars over here, I'm going to collapse my budgets here, right? You see these rectangular bars here under your view settings. You can change the color. So right now they're by status. You can change them by epic. You can change them by, oops, wrong place. You can change them by issue type, right? And so you can say, okay, so some of these are kind of cool because they let you like really customize it, right? So you can say all other issues are going to be gray, and I can do green. I want them to be all the bugs. So all my bugs will turn green. You can say I want like purple to be all of my stories, right? And you can see here now my epics are one color and my epics are the stories are another. Why you would mix match the icons versus the rectangles, I don't know. Crazier things have happened. Try to keep it consistent if you don't want headaches, but you can do this, right? You can do it by label. So you can add a bunch of labels in here and call out your label. So you can say orange is going to be this label, right? You can do by priority. So if all your reds are going to be one, right? And these are already pre-configured for you, so you can just move things around. But yeah, these are all the options. Now, unfortunately, if it's not in here, then you can't do it. So if it's so budget, right? Like let's just say you want to do it by budget, you won't be able to do it. So you'll have to use something like the label to get custom. Okay. So that's the color by. The sort by, I would leave my 2 cents. I would leave ranked, but you can change it to anything here. The reason I like ranked is because I can take any of these items and move them up and down. I can do it at the story level. I can do it at the epic level. I can do it at any level. I can take any item, even at the subtask level, and rank them, re-rank them. And that means that Jira is going to remember. So when I click my save changes, everything here was ranked. And what that means is all the most important stuff goes at the top and you work your way down on level of importance. So I like to do that. Or you're like, Alex, well, I already prioritize everything. Great. Order by priority or sort by priority. And then everything's going to be in that priority. Now, uh, oftentimes I hear this term called critical path, right? Maybe you guys are familiar with this term critical path. In the chat, let me know. Are you all familiar with critical path, right? And so critical path is something where like you're like, okay, here's like the most important things. Like this is from start to finish, all the stuff that needs to get done to deliver this project. And so what I like to do with critical path, right? And so Chad is a very popular term in just the traditional like PMP world, if you will, right? Traditional project management. Critical paths are pretty important, right? And so what I like to do is I like to order my stuff by priority or by due date and then set everything correctly. Because if I spend the time to put the right priorities or the right due dates on stuff, then I technically can build out a critical path using my sort by either priority or due date. So just a little food for thought for anybody who wants to know. Like you build out the plan that says, okay, here's the start, here's the finish, here's everything that needs to get done in this particular order. Here's a critical path. Okay. We have our group by. So what this does is it adds swim lanes. So the group by is very much like in the board where you can change the swim lanes. I can do it by assignee. So now I can look at all my tasks. Instead of just seeing all the tasks on the board, I can see them by assignee. I can see them by the reporter. I can see them by the project. So if you're pulling in multiple projects, you can see which tasks are there. Okay. And then our dependencies. So earlier when we're looking at dependencies, I'm going to pop this back to none and do this to default, right? So I can show the lines. This can get overwhelming. So if you don't want to see that, you can just do badges and it shows you, hey, there's a dependency. You can hover over it and click on it, and then it'll show you that dependency. I don't know. This is a personal preference, and pick what you want there. And then you have your rollups. So this will roll up data. Now, this used to be cooler. This used to roll up any number field, and I used to love that. I don't know why Atlassian changed this, but basically it tells you what it'll roll up in the little description here, and that's it. So those are your view settings. Now, what I will tell you, right, as you do that, we'll come back to, we'll skip capacity here. But as you change your views, as you're in your list view or your timeline view, and as you go into your filters, right, because over here in the filters, you can basically change your view here, right? So you can go all the way from the initiative, right? Let's just do initiative because I don't have goals. You can do from the initiative all the way down. So I can show, here's my initiative, here's my epic, right? Let's just say maybe you want to see them from a specific project, so we can do that, right? So any changes that you do, view settings, filters, whatever you want, columns, right? The fields that you bring in, whatever fields you bring in, you can save your view. You can save it, and you can either save it as a new one, which I would recommend, or you can save it to an existing one, which I wouldn't recommend. But you can save it, and now when you do this, anybody who comes in here will be able to see your stuff the way you saw it, which is important when you're sharing this with your executives. Okay, so that's that. Now, to wrap things up, we're going to stop here, right? Because this is just basically saving your views so that if anybody clicks on them, then they're going to be able to see the configurations, the filters, the fields, the settings that you've set up, okay? So keep that in mind. You want to set up views. So to wrap things up just here, because we're done, we are going to be at Team 25 doing this lecture in person. So if you're coming to Team 25, highly recommend you sign up so you can take this session live with me in front of you, right? Also, I have a few courses on Udemy. Well, I have one right now, but I'm building a few more. But right now, it's normally 90, dropping it down to $12.99 for y'all. Coupon code Atlassian2. So click on that link. If you go to that link, you're going to be able to sign up for the class. You get two bonuses. One, if and when I do drop the Udemy course for this one, you'll get that one for free. And then if you sign up today and today only, so you got to take action here, folks. You got to sign up today, and you have questions, right? 15 minutes of my time is $50. So this is a $50 offer, right? Then you'll get a free 15-minute session with me for buying the course. So if you want to not spend $50 and you just want spend $13, you get three bonuses. You get the Jira for Fundamentals course. You will get the upcoming Jira Advanced Roadmaps course on Udemy, and then you'll get 15 minutes of my time, which again is worth about $50 here. So sign up for those there. Lastly, here I do teach a lot of courses, as I mentioned, right? So this is the first time here. These are all the courses that I have in the horizon. So go sign up. Sign up for one of my other classes. I also have a bunch of colleagues that do similar courses. So go to that link, check out all the different offerings that are out there. And this is what's left. So we're going to be talking capacity management next time. And so we, as you can see here, we have a lot going on here. So make sure you check them out and sign up for all those courses. And then finally, make sure you connect with me on LinkedIn, right? So I'll drop the link tree one more time here. In my link tree, there's a connect with me somewhere around here. There's a connect with me on LinkedIn. There's if you wanted those 15 minutes, or maybe you want an hour, right? If you need help with anything plans related, connect with me on LinkedIn or sign up for an hour, right? But definitely subscribe, and we're gonna wrap this up here. So make sure you're subscribed to the channel. Help me get to 24,000 subscribers before the end of the Atlassian conference in 2 weeks. So that would be awesome. So if you haven't subscribed, take a second here to subscribe, and I'll see you all next month. Bye.